Welcome to the third season of Heard Afros and Audio interview series. My guest today is Monice Mitchell Simms. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to speaking with you today. So, we're going to jump right in. We'll talk about the podcast, but we also want to learn about you and understand your why for the work that you have done. So, first
Right.
things first, off the bat, you've interviewed legendary figures like Toni Morrison,
Yes,
Maya
sir.
Angelou, and even President Barack Obama. How have these
hmm
conversations influenced your own approach to storytelling?
I think it's wonderful to talk to living legends and to get their perspective on things, and also to see that when I spoke with them, they were still very much active as storytellers. They weren't sitting back on their laurels and just relaxing with their accolades. They were still trying to find a way to tell our stories and to be productive for the culture. So that inspires me still to continue. There's no age limit on how long you can be a storyteller. It doesn't matter whether you have accolades or not. If you're put on this earth to tell stories, that's what you have to do until the day you die. And so speaking to those legends just enforced that for me.
How has that affected your approach to storytelling?
It's affected my approach to storytelling by making me a lifelong student. I never stopped learning. I just never stopped reading. I reread things just because if you read something like The Bluest Eye when you're in college and grad school, you pick it up in your 50s and it's a totally different story because you have changed, you have grown. It's just taught me that I have to continue learning and growing as an artist, as a writer, as a storyteller, keep expanding myself outside of my comfort zone so I can tell better stories and just not sit back and think, okay, I've done it all. You just haven't. Being a storyteller is a constant journey of relearning and growing. And that's what that's taught me.
Absolutely. I love that so much. I'm a storyteller myself, a writer. I've actually met Dr. Maya Angelou at least twice when I was a teenager
Yeah.
living in Washington, D.C. And it's something to be said about these legends and the fact that we also have the audacity to tell stories. Because as you are in those early stages, like you said, there's stages and levels to reading and rereading the work. The first time you read it, you're like, okay, I'll never write because I'll never do this. So forget it.
Let it
Just
go,
forget
right?
about it. Yeah. And then you realize that they have paved a way and
Yes.
also are giving permission to say, you go too. Your work is relevant and necessary too. And I'm one voice and I'm one storyteller,
Right.
but we need all of us to carry
Exactly.
this legacy. So I really respect that so much. What's your favorite Toni Morrison book?
Beloved.
Really?
Beloved's my
Okay.
favorite. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the first one I
Awesome.
read. It
Same. I
was my
think that's the
first.
first I read. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah, I read others as well. It was just like Sade say, it's never as good as the first time, right? Like the first book I read, my first introduction, and it was the most difficult for me to read too, because Toni
Hmm.
was dense. She didn't make it easy for you to understand the text at all. Sometimes you have to pick out that thesaurus or reread it again, like what just happened. So it was one of the first texts that really challenged me to reach beyond just what was on the page. I had to think beyond that and take my time with it. You couldn't rush it.
Hmm.
For me, that was my favorite. What
Yeah.
about you?
Yeah. Song of Solomon, hands down,
Okay.
is my favorite.
Yeah.
I just enjoy it, and I've read it probably three times, and it's most likely time for me to reread
Yeah.
again. I think, to your point, Beloved and Bluest Eye are the first introduction to Toni Morrison for most people. I believe Beloved was my first, and then Bluest Eye I was introduced to, which was her first.
Yeah.
I agree with you. Beloved, that first page and a half, I mean, you
That
reread
first
that
page, bro,
50
I was
times.
like, what is this?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You just have to keep reading that until you get it. Until
exactly.
something starts clicking. Oh,
Right.
I get it. That must have been something else, having the opportunity to speak with them for you. And was this earlier in your career or life was
I
this
was
for you?
Yeah, it was early. I was a journalist and I was actually, if I remember correctly, I was interning. I was an intern at the Detroit Free Press when I wrote that piece about her. And I don't know if it was Black History Month. I don't know what the situation was, but they just said, would you like to interview Toni Morrison? It was a phone call and she was very gracious because you could tell, I think, what was I, 19? She could
Nice.
tell that she was talking to a young person and her teacher spirit. She just took the time to answer my questions. I'm sure some of my questions were very like, really? That's the best you could do? But she was very kind and gracious to answer my questions. I have to admit that at the time, I probably didn't put as much on it as I am now. Like I said, as you get older, you realize, wow, that was amazing. I spoke to Toni Morrison. But at the time, I probably didn't. I was 19.
Mhm.
It was another story I needed to write. And I was happy that I did it, but it didn't really sink in until much later that I realized that in my career as a journalist that I've spoken to Toni Morrison and Maya Angelou and I interviewed Barack Obama and all these great people that when you're trained as a journalist, you're supposed to just be objective, ask the
Mhm.
questions, you can't fangirl out, write the story and move on to the next. And that was the mindset I had at the time. But now looking back, I'm like, what a blessing that was able to talk to
Absolutely.
her.
Yeah, absolutely. What an experience. That's awesome. Not a lot of people can say that they had those conversations, heard a voice, even over the phone. That's exceptional. I'm super happy for you that you had that experience.
Thank you.
For sure, for sure. Your creative work spans screenwriting, filmmaking, poetry, and podcasting. How do
Yeah.
these different mediums inform and inspire one another in your storytelling process?
I'm a believer in that the story always tells me its form. I've been training all these things. I think the thing I've worked the hardest at as far as training and everything is screenwriting, taking all the classes and all the experience. I've been doing that the longest for over 25 years. Poetry is my native tongue. That's my voice. I've never been trained in that. I refuse to figure out the magic of poetry because I wanted to remain a safe space for me. No matter what's going on in my life, I always write poetry, I always read poetry. So poetry is like home. Screenwriting is like being an architect. Like I have to figure out what the story is, but you only tell so much story because you only have so many pages, so much landscape that you can work with. As a novelist, I get to roam, I get to be free, I can jump back and forth in time, I can just do all the things that you can't do on a page as a screenwriter. So all of them give me a different part of freedom as an artist. And I have to do them all because otherwise I think I would go mad. If I was just working as a screenwriter the whole time with all of its limitations and all of its, you write a screenplay, it really is just the blueprint for the movie. But that doesn't mean the movie's going to get made. So I have all these screenplays that have never been produced. So it can be very frustrating as a writer to pour 3 months into a screenplay and not to mention all the rewrites and years of rewrites and it never gets made. That's why I started writing novels because I said, I need to get this story out and it just be my own voice, not
Mhm.
be impacted by producers' notes. I just need to do this myself. And then when I figured out how to be an independent publisher, I was like, okay, now I can get this out so people can really see what my original vision was for this story. Because it can be very
Mhm.
frustrating when you write a screenplay and then it gets because it's collaborative, right? So
Mhm.
you write the screenplay, and then a director gets a hold of it, and a producer gets a hold of it, and then you look at it, you're like, that is not what I wrote. But that's the part of the process.
Yep.
So that's why I do all these different genres so that I can remain sane as an artist. And poetry for me, like I said, is safeness. I don't show it to anyone. I just write it in
Yeah.
my journal.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to you watching some of the series this year because we have two screenwriters who
Okay.
started off in film and they brought those screenplays into audio drama. Are you working in audio dramas yet?
Yeah, actually, I produced one of my novels as an audio drama. I was able to use my filmmaking experience, and I got actors to do all the characters and the sound effects and the music. I was
Okay.
able to use my ability as a screenwriter and filmmaker
Mm-hmm.
into the audio space. I think it's a wonderful way for storytellers to get their stories done because you can have a podcast set in Mars or going back in time. You don't have to worry about paying for it because you just
Mm-hmm.
need to be able to build it through sound. So yeah, I've
Yes.
done that as well.
What's the name of your audio drama?
Corrections.
Okay, looking forward to to listening to that. Knowing that audio drama is that place for you to continue to do the work, even when those barriers over there might be too hard to break through at any given point in your career.
Yeah.
Audio dramas is definitely a space. I'm glad that you're here, and yeah, looking forward to seeing you do more work in it. So, what inspired you to create works in progress, and what unique space does a podcast occupy in the storytelling world?
Works in progress is an idea I've had for a very long time. I actually call it Podcuseries instead of a podcast because it is a journey through speaking to storytellers from all the different genres I've written in: poetry, screenwriting, novels, journalism, all that great stuff. And I want to inspire writers to finish their works in progress, because a lot of times when you see someone and they may be an Emmy winner or Oscar winner or wherever they are, you think that they're better than you. It's a democratizing process to show us that we all start with a blank page. We all experience bouts of writer's block. We all have lifing, and we find a way to still tell our stories. When the people come and they talk to me, that's the perspective they're coming from. They're sharing, how can you continue to be a working artist, a writer, a storyteller, when all this stuff is going on around you, when maybe your career isn't where you want it to be, or you just got dropped by an agent, or you're a new parent. Just, there are things that are happening in everyone's lives that sometimes, especially with social media, it looks like everyone's got it all together, and we don't. So I call it a Podcuseries because I'm learning just like they are. These are people I'm speaking to that I admire, that I've been cheering along, that I'm learning from. There's still things that I need to learn. There's still things that I need to remind myself of. And these are conversations that I'm growing from as well. So I'm growing along with the audience. So I'm sharing my
Mhm.
journey as they're learning as well. So I wanted to do this because I've always wanted to demystify the process of storytelling and creating. And I haven't been a teaching artist my entire life. We are amazing storytellers and artists, but it also isn't rocket science. If you have a
Mhm.
story to tell, you just start writing it and telling it. I don't want people to think that they can't do it because they don't come from a certain background, or they don't have this and they don't have that. That's why I wanted to do this, to motivate and encourage people, especially in this climate that we in. We need more diverse storytellers. We don't need them to be discouraged at all. We need your stories. Every person needs to tell their point of view through a story. And I believe that if more of us did that, if more of us reached outside our comfort zone of what we're used to seeing, we would learn about each other more. We wouldn't be as afraid of each other,
Mhm.
because at the bottom line is we're all the same. We just have different perspectives. And the best way to do that, to break down those barriers, is through stories.
I love the term PodQ series. That's great. Hopefully, one year that'll be the word that gets added to the definition of the year. We're gonna push for that.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Your podcast focuses on encouraging storytellers to finish their works, as you said. How do you hope the podcast will motivate others? When someone who hasn't been on the show, someone who hasn't listened, I know people in my life who haven't finished work. What do you think will motivate them the most out of the work that you've done on the podcast? On the PodQ series. Let's just call it PodQ series.
Pocky serious. What I'm hoping is just by listening to people tell their stories. It's not a do this, do that type of thing. It's very conversational, like we're having right now. And I just want people to share their testimonies, their backgrounds. And by listening to these conversations, I'm hoping that you'll see a part of yourself in what they're sharing. And then you'll
Mm-hmm.
start to see, oh, okay, I'm not alone in feeling this way. I'm not alone in where I am right now. I shouldn't feel bad about what I have going on. Life is life in right now. And my story is just waiting for me to get back to it. So I just want to motivate and encourage and give people aha moments. Another great thing about my Pocky series is that I also have everyone that comes on the show, they have to submit a work in progress. And then
Okay.
we have actors read that work in progress. So they get to see their work in progress being performed by actors in real time, and they're starting to learn and have their own aha moments in that moment. Oh, okay, I heard this back now. This should change. This should change. This should shift. That worked. This didn't work. So it's just breaking down again the barrier of the creative process. Like, we all have to start here. You have to put your work out there to be read and performed and critiqued. And so everyone is being vulnerable in that moment, because we all as creators know, I don't want to put my stuff out there when it's not ready. So for people to say, I will do this, I want to help other
Mm-hmm.
people to see that no work is really ever finished. It's just done. If that, you understand what I'm saying? I
Oh
got to
yeah.
get this done, right? I got to get it out there. Even Toni Morrison, I've heard her talk about she couldn't read Beloved again because she's I'm so much better now, writer. So if someone like that felt that they could continue to improve. Can you imagine as someone who's actually doing it in the process right now, what they're doing? And then talking through what they feel when they see their work being read back to them and how they want to change it and improve it. So I think I'm hoping that it helped people to understand that even though you have a work in progress and you haven't finished it, that this seeing someone else go through that progress, because writing can be very solitary and very lonely. And if you're not talking to another writer, they don't always get what's going on. So if you're hearing someone that you respect or know, or just getting to know, going through the same thing that you're going through, I'm hoping that'll encourage you to continue, because we
Mm.
need these stories. We need you to finish it. Someone out there is waiting for it. Even if you think it's not perfect and it's not ready, there's somebody who's going to read it and, oh my God, this is amazing. And you
You're
got to
so
get it
right.
finished.
I love that. It's such a creative concept, the way that you are doing the Pocky series. Is that something that you had the vision for? Like, where did that come from? Besides that you're creative as hell.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Yes. So my entire career, whenever I finish something, and I've gotten to the point where I've gone as far as I can go, I always just call some of my actor friends and ask them to, let's read through this so I can hear it back, because it's been living in my head for so long. I think it's amazing, but perhaps it's not. And then when they read
Wow.
through it, I'm able to hear what's not working, what is working, and I can change it in that moment. Now that I've given it to someone else, I can't be as precious about it, if that makes sense. Now it's out there, it's living, right? And you
Mm-hmm.
just have to let it go like a child. The child has to go to preschool. You got to put the baby in kindergarten. So that's why I do that for myself. And over the years, I just saw how much it did for me personally. I said, it's just made me a better writer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in Los Angeles, so I'm surrounded by amazing creative people and actors and directors and producers and things. And when I created this Pocky series, I wanted to make it a community effort, not just me talking to the writers, because a lot of times we segregate ourselves. Writers hang out with writers, directors hang out with directors, and producers and actors, they hang out, and we don't really come together. But I've been out here for so long, I know so many amazing actors, and I know that if I just call them, I'm like, can you read this? And they always show up. And so I just took it a step further and said, would you do this for the Pocky series? They're like, absolutely. So it,
Nice.
it makes it different than just talking about writing. I'm actively showing you the process. That's what I want to do, so that more people can see that you can do this for yourself. If you don't know any actors, just getting friends to read your stuff helps the writer so much. So we're not so alienated from the process of this communal nature of creativity, unless you're writing novels. But if you're doing anything beyond that, if you're writing plays, if you're doing podcasts, if you're doing screenplays, you got to get everybody else involved. So that's why I came up with this idea.
Oh wow, I love that. That's so cool. Yeah, and so this Pocky series is for the screenwriter.
It's for everybody. I'm
Okay.
interviewing anybody, which is fun, because to do that to a novel is fun as well. Because I did that for my own novel, Address House of Corrections. My audio drama is based on my novel.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew I could do it for someone else. And to
Yeah.
do it for, I haven't done it for a nonfiction book yet. I'm looking forward to that. I want to take anything that's written and make it auditory for people to experience for themselves.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the challenge of, how do you take a cookbook and make that an auditory experience? So any writer, and I'm also want to show writers that a lot of times that when you think about writing, you only think about poetry or screenwriting or writing novels or playwriting.
Mm-hmm.
But there are writers of everything. If you're not a journalist, that's fine. You have a cookbook you want to write, that's writing as well. Are you
Mm-hmm.
interested in being a travel writer? That's writing as well. I want to talk to any writer there is and to understand what their process is, because we just think storytelling is just this one thing, but it's so expansive.
It
So that's my
is.
goal.
All right. I love that so much. I really do. I can't wait to listen. Maybe my novel fiction will make it over there at some point. We'll see.
I would love that.
What recurring challenges do you think storytellers face when completing their projects, and how does your podcast address these obstacles? And of course, you've talked about a number of them. Is there any specific recurring challenges that you see come up for folks?
I think one of the biggest recurring challenges is just how do you continue to be creative when you have real life things going on out here in LA? I'm not expecting anybody to be writing anything right now because of the fires and things like
Mhm.
that. But people have so much going on in their lives that it's sometimes hard to find a space to remain creative or even to
Mhm.
understand that it's important to your well-being to be creative. If you're a father, if you're a mother, if you have kids and things like that, you have so many things pulling at you that sometimes we forget about ourselves. And I've learned personally that as a writer, a creative person, I have to make the space. I have to like guard it with my life, like a pit bull. This is the time that I have to be creative, because if I don't do this, I can't be there for you. I can't be there for my husband. I can't be there for my mother and my family.
Mhm.
I gotta be selfish to a point where I just protect this creative bubble for however long that is. If all you have is 15 minutes a day, guard that with your life. This is my 15 minutes a day to get this done, because then
Mhm.
the rest of your day will go better because you've done something for yourself. And I think a lot of times, especially as creatives, if you're not making money at it, some people don't always value the creative person because they can't see the physical thing that it does. But I know personally that without creative people, during COVID especially, we all would have gone crazy. We were all inside. And the only
Mhm.
thing we had to do was to focus on what was creative, which was the Netflixes of the world, the books of the world. So we need storytellers. We need stories. We are really like essential workers of the universe. So I think that's the biggest thing, is maintaining that protection for yourself. And even if when you do that, the words don't come or the stories don't come, that's not the point. You just have to continue to do it. And
Mhm.
your muse would finally show up and be like, oh, okay, so this is what we doing? If we writing 15 minutes a day, 3 o'clock in the morning, because the house is quiet, I'm gonna show up and we're gonna make that the best 15 minutes ever.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
it'll become 30 minutes. It might become 40 minutes. Or you might have to go back to 15 because life is lifing. I think that's our biggest obstacle sometimes is ourselves, because we just don't value enough how important we are as storytellers.
Mhm. Mhm. And definitely to your point, I can attest to the need to create that. Life is happening. Running this conference, Afros and Audio, it's in its seventh year, and the last 2 years I've published a book. One was a short poetry book. I called them haikus, but I said anybody that know what haikus are would tell me that they aren't. So let me just not call it haikus. And then a nonfiction book this year. Things are so challenging, right? And just life. And so without that outlet and without that ability to create, I know that was the happiest time in the whole year for
Yeah,
me.
exactly.
And so just doing it for self, the world may get their hands on it, but being able to let out what's in is
Mm-hmm.
everything. So to
Yeah.
encourage folks to express, get it out. If not, it's going to tap you on your shoulder anyway, every other day, asking you, is today today?
Right.
So you might as well go ahead and answer it, you
You
know?
might as well. And don't
Absolutely.
think about where it lands or what it's going to be or any of that stuff. It's such a weird craft that we have, and that you have to, when you're writing, when you're creating, you can't worry about what happens after. You can't worry about it at all. And then when it gets out there, then you figure out how to get it to the people, all this type of stuff. I don't know of any other business where they tell you, don't worry about how much money it's going to make and where it's going to be. Everything else, you have to think about business plan from the jump. Okay, where
Mm-hmm.
is this going? Blah, blah, blah. But in order for it to resonate with people, we have to detach ourselves from the outcome.
There you go.
And that's it's such a weird dynamic, especially out here in Hollywood. Was okay, you're writing this for what reason? Like, who's looking for it? Nobody. Like my Pocky series, no one said, "Hey, Monice, I want you to come up with this great idea, creative." No one said that. I just decided that I need to do this. I've
Mm-hmm.
been trying to do this for the longest time, and I couldn't find a host. And my husband was like, "You realize you're the host, right?" I'm like, "What? No, I'm behind the scenes. I'm a producer." You know, you're the host. So I had to come to that realization, and anything that could go wrong did go wrong. But I said, I'm moving forward with this because this is something I'm doing for me.
Mm-hmm.
And when people hear like you're trying to motivate and encourage writers, yeah, but I'm also doing this for me first.
There you go. Yeah, and shout out to your husband for giving you that revelation.
Oh, thank you. Got me a good one.
There you go. There you go. So, with a background as a journalist, what's your approach to crafting meaningful conversations with the Pocky series guests?
What I love about being a journalist, and I was also a very shy kid. I was afraid of my shadow, couldn't talk to anybody. It forced me to have to talk to people and to ask them the who, what, when, why, how, the basics of things. But what I quickly learned was being a journalist and having conversations with people is mostly about listening. You can have, and I'm sure you've done in our conversation, you can have your list of questions that I got to ask this.
Hmm.
But then as we're talking, it might make you spark a different idea and you go off a different tangent. And I had to learn that you can't just be so focused on your questions that you're not listening to who you're talking to, because that's where the story is. It's in the stuff that you didn't think to ask about. And it's also in the silences, right? Because it's human nature to feel the silence. So I had a mentor tell me, like, when you get your questions together, ask them. You got the 5 questions you got to ask. Go ahead. But then just listen, just have a conversation. And then when it gets quiet, don't feel the need to fill the silence. Let them feel it, because that's when they'll tell you something they weren't expecting to tell you.
Hmm.
And it was a balance with the podcast series because there's a conversation as well. And you got to balance like how much you're talking, the questions you're asking, and stuff like that. So there were some people where I really didn't talk that much because I was learning so much from what they were saying. They were sharing so much good stuff that I was like, I don't have to ask a question here. So journalism for me was that really great school about just how to be a conversationalist, and it taught me deadline. That's the thing that's makes helped me survive this entire time out here, because I know how to make a deadline for myself and to finish it. And a lot of writers, we're procrastinators. We don't finish until, oh, it's due next week or it's due tonight and you're up all night. No, I know how to do a deadline and get it done. And that's helped me to be productive, not just for someone else. I work harder for myself than I do for other people because of my training as a journalist and knowing
Hmm.
deadlines and all this type of stuff. So I tell everybody, I know journalism is in the dumpster fire right now, but I wish more students that I've mentored had that journalism background, because then they would understand what the basics are of a story. It's made me a better screenwriter.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, that training and technique is so important. And like you said, there's certain aspects of our writing where academia would just screw it all up, right? It's
Oh,
just
yeah.
poetry. Let me do what my heart, let me let that speak.
Yes.
Um, but you're so right. Without that background, just like you said, I can create a deadline. I know how to do that all day, but I also know how to move it because I don't have that part. I am the procrastinator. Hello, how are you? So I get it. And it doesn't stop you from finishing things. I've authored 3 books. We do it, but it's not always the funnest process because we're beating ourselves up. We're guilty. We're shamed. It's a journey. So absolutely having those things that you are skilled in to support the craft,
Yeah.
and to know that there's always space and room for improvement.
Always. I think also that's the journalist in me as well. Is that's why I'm ever curious about everything. I can research at nauseum sometimes. I have to make myself just, okay, stop researching, just start writing. And all of my stories actually come from a real place. It might be something I read or something I heard. It might be a kernel of something. And then I can go beyond that. But that's because I read the newspaper every morning. I'm like, always, what's going on in the world? I want to know beyond what's happening here, what's happening in
Mm,
Japan, what's happening in Egypt, that type of stuff. And that's definitely from being a journalist. And it helps me to be objective about the stories. Now, some stories arrest me, like my novel, Edgeworth House Corrections, totally personal, totally taken over by the spirit. That was nothing that I researched. But a lot of the other things I write are based on, oh, I just read this article and this seems interesting. What would happen if? That's my favorite question. What if? Now, I know
mm,
this is what happened, but what if this happened? And then it becomes something else. But a lot of things are jump started from real life. So that's what my journalism training did for me. I'm never without story ideas because I'm always researching and learning and growing. And then I just have to wait for which idea won't leave me the hell alone. That's the
hmm.
one that I write.
There you go. They will haunt you. They will. They
Yes.
will. They will wake you up and sit in the car with you and do all types of things that you don't. I get it. And I so appreciate having this conversation with you because I get it. And it's good to know. And like you said, your podcast series helps to open up that narrative that we aren't alone. Most of us think that we're alone because we don't open our mouth and say, this is what I'm going through, so somebody else could say, oh, me too. And that's the beauty of podcasting also. The person will find what they need to hear and
Right,
it will support them or it will
right.
entertain them or whatever it is.
Exactly.
But I
Exactly.
found you because I needed you. And thank you.
Yes. Yes.
How do you balance exploring your guests' personal stories with offering insights that your audience can apply to their own creative journey?
Yeah, I think it's just an organic process for me. Having been a journalist for so long, like I said, I have those questions that I have to ask. Each conversation has to give insight, it has to be entertaining, it has to be personal. So I have these five tenets that all my conversations have to have. And as long as I hit that in some way, it can happen at the very end. But as long as I get those things in there, I'm good. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not worried about the structure of, I purposely decide I'm not going to force myself to make this a structured conversation. Organically, these things will come out. And they always do. And it always surprises me. Sometimes, like when I'm going back and I'm looking at the edit, I'm like, oh, I forgot to ask. And then there it is. It'll come up right when it's supposed to. It always flows organically. And I don't tell my guests where the conversation is going to go. I'm just saying, we're just going to talk like we're buddies. We're just sitting here talking about writing. That's it. And our lives and all that stuff. And it organically every time comes around. I'm always very surprised how these conversations are all very different but the same.
Mm-hmm.
It's hilarious to me. And I'm hoping, like you said, like I found you because I need you, right? I want people to get something from each of these conversations that they need. And I'm not knocking you over the head. It's not like a master class where you're sitting down taking notes. It's just sometimes the best lessons learned are just through conversations,
Mm-hmm.
and you hear and you remember something like, oh, they said that. So and okay, and it'll stick with you. If you get from my conversations one thing that helps you, I'm good. Because this life of being an artist over 40, ain't no rule book for this.
Yeah.
This game is rough. And most of us aren't born into lives to be storytellers. A lot of us are aliens in our own families where they don't
Mm-hmm.
really understand. Like you're staring off into space. What are you doing? I'm working. Really? Because you're just looking off into space. I'm thinking about stuff. And I've been with my husband long enough that he knows when I had that look. He's like, oh, you're thinking about a story, aren't you? Yeah. Even though I could be looking right at the TV screen
Yeah.
because I saw something and it triggered something. I'm thinking about my own stuff. I want people to find their people with this series. That's why I want to talk so many different genres of writing, because I don't want you to think there's only one way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
People write greeting card. People do that. People write crossword puzzles. People do that. There are different ways to be a writer, and I just want people to find their way to do it.
Yeah, that's some important work. It really is. And like you said, the older we get and we've been creating for a while, we've had those rejections. We've
Yeah.
got those letters. Some people frame them. I don't understand that. Mine are going in the trash. I don't want to think about them no more. But it's one of those things where the game is always set up to discourage. It's going to happen. I have this philosophy that people and things might disappoint you. It's our job not to disappoint ourselves.
Mm,
To remain creative. That's to remain on the path that you've been called for and not let other things discourage you from that. And as we get in our big age, sometimes we think, I've done it. I've done enough. Maybe it's over or maybe it's too late for me. To that we say, what you talking about?
exactly. But that's what we've been conditioned to believe. And I'm also talking that this is cross generational. So I'm also going to be talking to young people as well. I was one of those kids since I was 13 or
Mm.
whatever. Some people get success very early and then they go through this dry period of adulting and it doesn't happen or whatever. So I want to talk to everybody on all the journeys. I'm talking to people from 13 to 70. We're all storytellers.
Yep.
Yeah, and we all have our different journeys. Just because one of my guests might be 13, that doesn't mean you can't learn something from them.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we talk enough about what storytelling is and what it means to be a storyteller. And I just feel like we're the essential workers of the universe. So we need to give these people a platform to show them what's going on. Like when you get to that big age, you feel like I've been doing this forever and nothing's happened, but that's not true. Something always happened. We put on what needs to happen. Like you keep moving the goalposts, right?
Mm-hmm,
Okay, I got this, I won this award, but I need to get this. And you keep moving it and moving it. And you have to remember that even though you feel like you haven't gotten where you're supposed to go, someone else could be looking at your career and what you've done and your achievements, be like, oh my God, you're amazing. And you have to remember, I'm amazing.
mm-hmm,
I
mm-hmm.
have to keep doing this. This is why I was put here to tell this story. And whether it sells one book or 10 million books, it's going to impact someone. I'm so passionate about this because this has been my journey and my testimony for my entire career, coming from Detroit and my family working in the auto industry and just making it up as I go. I just want to help people who are in the same position.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to the PyQ series, which hasn't launched yet. It will launch.
Yeah, it's
It
going to
will
be launching
launch.
in the spring. Another purposeful move. This will be my third podcast that I've done. And I wanted to do something that was intentional and take my time. I didn't want to be rushed by a deadline. Like just because
Mm-hmm.
it's Thursday, it's got to be put out. I didn't want that. I wanted to reach out to people that I want to talk to. These are conversations that I want to have. I don't have to have them.
Yeah.
I want to.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm taking my time, going back to the old school days of TV specials where you just put out Barbara Walters or Oprah Winfrey would do a special and everybody would be like, oh, I want to see it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I want to do. And is it risky? Yeah. But I want to do it because I know intentionally that I want to create something that's purposeful and I don't want to have to just put it out there because I have a deadline. So it's a monthly podcast. So I'm only having monthly conversations with people. So that
Okay.
makes it even more intentional. When you do things that way, it's just because you got to get it out. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I got life going on myself. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
a creative person. I have other projects I'm working on. So I wanted to do something that was very attainable for me, but something that could be special, hopefully, and build an audience for. So we're launching April and it'll come out once a month. And these conversations will find the people who need to find them. And I'll just keep doing them as long as people still want to come and talk to me on my couch.
Mm-hmm. Nice, nice. And it's your prerogative. It's your platform. It's your PodQ series. It's whatever you want to do. And more of us get to really understand that and give ourselves permission to show up in a way that is sustainable
Yes.
and supports us. As you said, we're people who happen to podcast. That's the beginning and end of it. We got a life. So I really appreciate and respect your approach to this project because it opens up the possibilities for the genre. And it does say, oh, okay, this is different. You don't got to go out every week. I don't have to be crazy every day because it provides that foundation. And so I really respect your approach to this, and I'm really looking forward to it because the more we do status quo work, and
Yeah.
you're creative, and I'm sure you've done some really amazing work. The more we are heeding to status quo work, we get to break the mold.
That was one of the reasons it took me so long to try to do it because I was like, can I do this every week? And then when I thought about, like you just said, wait, I'm the executive producer, I'm the studio. So I
There you
can
go.
create this in the way that I can. So it's something I continue to do and I won't get burnt out. And I look forward to talking to people because I am an introvert. So if I have to talk all the time, I'm not
Hmm.
going to be interested. I have to remain curious. If I'm not curious, then the conversation is not going to be good and no one's going to care. So if that means I do it less and do it well, then let's do that.
Hmm.
And then I can be a place where people can come and just be like, oh, I'm looking forward to seeing this thing. Okay, now let me get back to my life. That's all we're doing. We're doing life work. I'm
Hmm.
just trying to help people continue with their lives. You
Yeah.
got things to do. I got things to do. Maybe this is something that you can enjoy and take back to your community, your life, your artwork, and okay, I can use this. And then it'll be there, of course. People can look at it again as many
Hmm.
times as they want, reread it or re listen to it or whatever. But I just want to do something intentional. It's just so much noise out there in the world. and there's so much competition for
Mm-hmm.
everybody's attention. I know the people who want to see this and hear this will find it.
Yeah.
And I'm not worried about anything else. Again, I have to divorce myself from the outcome. All I know is what my intention is, what my goal is,
Mm-hmm.
and so far that's been working. The people that I've been speaking to, the team I have around me, it's been working so far. So I can only have the faith that it will extend beyond that.
Absolutely, and it's going to be very impactful. So, actually experiencing it, I can only imagine. Is it going to be audio and video format?
Yes, it is. It's
Okay.
audio and video as
All
well.
right.
And then
Awesome.
I also have my website, so there'll be a blog component too, so you can read the different aha moments I'm having. And then there'll be a glossary of terms. So it's not like a typical sit down and write notes thing. There'll be glossary of terms, like there'll be some things that we may say in the conversation that the person might not know. And if you want to learn about it, you can Google it as well. But I'm going to put it there so you can just, oh, that's what they meant by so and so. I wanted to be like I'm a teaching artist, so I can't help but teach at the same time. But I didn't
Mm-hmm.
want it to be so like hard on the nose type thing. So I'm creating this thing that can help people in however you can do it. Because I used to teach in prisons. I taught in a girls' prison camp, and I had to quickly learn that some of those girls, their reading level was to the fourth grade level or something like that, or you don't know what their backgrounds are. And everyone doesn't learn the same. Some people learn by reading. I'm a reader. Let
Mm-hmm.
me read it. I got it. Some people need to hear it. Some people
Mm-hmm.
need to see it. Some people need to touch it. Now, I can't do that with this Pocky series, but at least I wanted to give them 3 different ways to experience this. If you're a reader, you could just read the transcript. If you
Mm-hmm.
want to see it, you can see the video. If you just want to listen to it, that's cool too. So again, being that intentional is another reason why I don't do that many of them, because
Yeah.
otherwise I would not be able to do all of this if it was for so
Respect.
many.
And what does success look like for you? I know you said you're detached from the outcome. We're creatives,
Ah,
and there's a reason why we're doing it.
success for me, I'm just gonna be real. I want to win that Oscar. I'm not playing games. Let's be real. I
There
want
we
to win
go.
an Oscar. I don't care if I'm Cicely Tyson's age on the stage getting it. That's the
Respect.
huge goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Huge goal.
Okay.
But the more tangible goal is I just want to keep reaching people with my gift of writing. That is, I've been blessed in that I've done different genres so I can reach people in different ways. I've written a children's book, I've written a novel, and every now and again I still get emails about, hey, I discovered this, that, and other. And that always makes me feel good
Mm-hmm.
because, okay, someone found it. Like my children's book is in Ghana and Senegal. So there are people in
Wow.
Africa reading my children's book. I just want to continue to be creative and tell my stories and be obedient to that process, whatever that looks like. And so it's a constant journey for me to figure out how that works. I'm still writing successfully, I'm still being produced successfully, but the big goal is to get that Oscar.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to be paid better as a writer. That'd be great.
Mm.
But I just think that the fact that I'm able to be a creative person still all these years later is in itself success.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to not be so hard on myself and looking at other people's success. Like I have to continue to build my own
Mm-hmm.
level of success. My family's safe. I'm able to be a creative where I do create my own hours and I'm not beholden to anyone. So as long as I have this laptop, I can go work. If I got a
Yeah.
call to go work in France right now, I could go
Mm-hmm.
and still do it. So I just want to be obedient.
I appreciate that, and we're all rooting for you. Let's get that Oscar,
Let's get it.
and in real life. So I have one more question for you, and then I'm gonna ask you to tell folks one how we can support you, and then two where we can listen to the work that you've done, the PodQ series.
Yes.
So if you had three storytellers that you could have had on Works in Progress, who would they have been?
Oh, I'm so mad at you right now. Uh,
Because the question is totally different. I decided that question.
who storytellers, right? Now, this is what's interesting because I define storytellers as not just writers, but songwriters. And
That's
so
fine.
knowing that, okay, got
Okay.
it.
Okay.
Right now, what's going on in Hollywood right now with these fires, I would love to have spoken to Octavia Butler. She saw this coming.
Oh
She
yeah.
foretold this. And actually, I went to Pasadena City College, and she did too. So it's like I've been walking in her footsteps, but just years behind her. So
Hmm.
Octavia Butler would have been someone I would have loved to spoken to. Another storyteller I would have loved to spoken to is Michael Jackson. I would love to hear his concept of creativity, especially as it changed as he got older and went through the awkward phase and stuff like that. So I would love to just see him create a song in person.
Hmm.
That would have been amazing. And then the third person storyteller. I'm trying to think outside of the box. I don't. Who is this third person? I keep thinking about my great grandmother. I don't know why my granny keeps popping into my head, but she wasn't a storyteller in the sense of she wrote things down, but she created the story of our family because she left what she knew in Georgia and came up to Detroit to start a whole new life. So she started on a whole new chapter, a whole new story for our family. So I would love to talk to my granny about her story, if that makes sense. Because I didn't really get to know much about my granny until she passed away, and I had to write her obituary. And this when I learned all these things about her. So I would love to just talk to my granny.
I love that. I really do. You see how let that silence work for us?
I see you struggle with it too.
I did. I did. I did. I said she gonna practice what she preach, right? I'm gonna be silent. And what a great answer. I'm privileged. I do have 20 plus hours of my grandmother who was
Oh
91
wow.
at the time and 94 now.
Oh
And yeah, I'm actively working on being very intentional about this podcast, which actually might be a podcast series now that I think about it.
yeah, go for it.
But yeah, that is so important because they have so many stories to tell. And even your exploration of her life through the obituary writing, it gives you so much to go from, and you understand why you are the person you are, the creative, go getter, all these things. And you took something from that, I'm sure.
Oh,
So,
absolutely. My novel, Address House of Corrections, is a series. So the first one was based on my grandmother, who actually was an ex convict in her life.
okay.
And then the second one is my mother's story. And then the third one will be my great grandmother's story. So
Awesome.
I've already been going down this journey of discovering who they are. They're the Holy Trinity. These women raised me and made me the tough, go getter, creative person that I am. And even though none of them went down this path of being a storyteller in that sense, because of their strength and because of what they instilled in me, it gave me the wings and the courage to do it, to leave everyone I knew behind and to
Hmm.
come here and realizing, oh, my family's done this before. My granny just walked off a Georgia plantation and said, we're going to Detroit because that's a better place for us. Just the strength that it took for her to do that, right? That's a blessing that you have. Is your grandmother or great grandmother?
My grandmother.
Yeah, that's a
Hmm.
blessing. I encourage you to really get that finished because the lessons that they share, again, just through conversation,
Hmm.
just through you finding things out about them. Like when I wrote my great grandmother's obituary, I didn't realize that I graduated from Wayne State University. That's where I got my journalism degree from. But she went there when it was Wayne College,
Mm.
and she had taken classes there. But she didn't get finished because life happened and everybody came up from Georgia and they had to stay with her. So she had to go work for some white folks, clean their house and stuff like that. But not once when I went to Wayne State University did she ever tell me I went to Wayne College.
Mm.
It never came up. And then when I did her, I'm like, oh my God. So I went to the same school as my great grandmother, but she just never told me. But
Mm.
she made sure I had money for my books. And she made sure that I was always able to have money for the gas and stuff like that. She wanted to make sure I finished because she never got to
Hmm.
finish. So those are the stories that I think our ancestors and our family members don't tell us sometimes. And you don't know where it's coming from. You don't know where that strength is coming from. I can't wait to hear it. So
Yeah, I'm
go
working
ahead
on
and
I'm
finish it.
working on it. Thank you so much. This has been such a great conversation. It's impacted me a great deal, and I mean that. Storyteller to storyteller, I feel filled. I really do. So
Good. I'm
thank you.
happy. Me
Yeah,
too. Thank you so
yeah,
much for having me.
absolutely. So tell folks, you've said Works in Progress is coming out April 2025. Is that launch noted on your website and all that?
It just says spring 2025 right
Okay.
now because literally
Okay.
I just decided it was going to be April like yesterday.
All right.
But yeah, but spring 2025 is listed on worksinprogress.com
Mm-hmm.
and it's WORKSN, the letter N, progress.com. Right now, it says who my guests are and things, and you get the basic information about what's going on. But as I get closer to the launch, because we have so much content, I'm going to be filling that in. You can go there and you can subscribe right now. So then when we do the launch, you'll get the email and you'll know that it's coming out.
Okay. And how can people find you online and social media?
I'm Monice, Monice Mitchell, Mitchell Simms, Simms, everywhere.
All right.
So you can find me on, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be on Twitter, but I'm on Twitter, on Facebook, Instagram. But honestly, the best place to find me is on my website,
Okay.
MoniceMitchellSims.com, because everything is there.
Okay.
And yeah, and if you email me, I'll email you back.
All right. All right. Thank you for all that you've done. Thank you for your contribution to storytelling and that creative work. One of the great things about this work that we do as creators is that once somebody discovers you, now we got a whole bunch of stuff to discover. So now I'm looking forward to that. MoniceMitchellSims.com is where we all can learn more about you. And I'm really looking forward to that. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you. And anything I can do to help, let me know.
All right.